Okay, we are recording. Today on Zoom, you'll see that there is a chat feature. You can use the chat to introduce yourself if you would like to. You can also put questions there, or you can use the question and answer feature, which will have the option to send that to everyone, which would be panelists and attendees, or to just the panelists, which would only go to me. So I would suggest sending it to everyone in the chat. And then for question and answer, I believe that only would go to me. If you see a raise hand feature, that would be great for when we get to our question portion of the webinar today, but also you can just use the chat if that is easier. People will be muted until the very end. For those that want to ask a question, I can unmute you. Only people that will be able to speak throughout this are those that are scheduled to speak for our presentations today. So that's, I think, all that I have. I will hand it over.
Hi. Kendall, can you tell me how many people are on this?
We have
watching?
10 people.
Okay, great. My name is Bill Cornrich. I am a member of Powell Valley Electric Co-op. I'd like to welcome you all. If you could go to the next slide, Kendall. So I am a member of a group called Powell Valley Electric Co-op Member Voices. And this slide gives you a little bit of an idea about how we got started and some of the accomplishments that we have. And I won't go into this in great detail because you can find a lot of it on our website. But the kind of discussion that we're going to be involved with today on solar installation comes as a result of a survey that we sent out last fall. And in that survey, there were several issues that a lot of members were interested in. One was broadband, which is moving along in particular in Sharps Chapel and other areas throughout the Powell Valley service area. And the other was solar installation of various kinds. So that's because of the response on that, we thought we would try and set up this webinar. We have several speakers today with us, both individuals who have recently and some time ago installed solar in their homes, and Dave Rivnak, who works with a solar installation firm in the Tri-Cities area. So we'd like to welcome you all, and again, use the chat if you have any questions, or raise hand, and we will get to them at the end. So I'm going to pass it back to you, Kendall.
All right. Lynn, do you want to say anything else about this slide before we go forward?
I guess not.
Okay, Bill, do you want to do the overview?
Yeah, so this is what we're going to talk about here today, these basic issues. And for those of you who are out there, we don't know whether any of you have approached any solar installers yet, or whether you are just interested in general learning more about it. So we're going to try and do just a touch base on all of these subjects: how solar and storage works, addressing false ads out there. Some of you may have encountered installers that are promising you that your system will pay for itself in 3 or 4 years. What does it mean within the TVA service territory? How does solar actually work for those of us who are, I think most folks on this call are members of Powell Valley Electric Cooperative. Recently, Powell Valley dropped its fees for solar installs and monthly charges at a board meeting. Mentioned Dave Rivnak, who will be talking with us about how it works, how to get started, nuts and bolts. And then we'll have a presentation from Nancy Bell, who is a Member Voices member and solar owner. And then we'll reserve at least 15 minutes for questions and answers. So with that, I will turn it back to Kendall.
All right. So to start us off, this is going to just be a couple minutes long video about basics and benefits of going solar. And I'm pretty sure that the sound should be able to play through. But if for some reason it is not, someone please let me know.
Nowadays, more and more people are going solar and taking advantage of the benefits of a residential solar energy system. A solar energy system will produce much of the energy your home needs, which can help to offset how much energy you need to buy from your utility company. And you'll reduce your carbon footprint as well, which is something else to feel good about. If you manage and monitor your usage, your solar energy system may generate more energy than you need. So you could earn credits for the surplus energy you export back to the grid. This part gets a little sciencey, but all you really need to know is this. Solar panels, or solar photovoltaic systems, absorb direct sunlight and convert it into electricity. Every panel is made up of solar cells which produce direct current, or DC electricity. That means the electricity flows in a single direction. Your home and appliances run on alternating current, or AC electricity, which means electricity currents can flow back and forth in two directions. So, to put solar energy to work in your home, your system must include an inverter that converts DC electricity to AC electricity. When your solar energy system is not producing enough electricity for your home, when it's, say, a really cloudy day or at night, your home is still connected to receive electricity from the grid, so you'll have uninterrupted power. Before you install solar on your home, there are a few things you'll need to remember. Every solar installation needs to be permitted in advance by your city or county. This is primarily for safety reasons, and your contractor can help you with this. If you're part of a homeowners association, you'll need to first obtain approval from your HOA. Not all solar panels are alike. Your contractor can help you select a solar technology that's best for your home. For more information on solar technology, visit sce.com/go-solar. Congrats on your first step to going solar.
All right. I hope folks found that helpful. This next one is about batteries and storage, and that'll be all of the videos for the day, but this one also is just a few minutes long.
Battery storage for home solar is here. Installing a battery will change how you use your solar power. Currently, the energy your solar system makes is supplied directly to your home as needed during the day. Unused power is sold into the grid, earning you a credit on your power bill with your electricity retailer. When your system is not generating power, you buy all your electricity from the grid. Solar battery storage changes how you use your solar power. With solar battery storage, your solar panels will still directly power your appliances while the sun is out. However, the extra power you're generating does not go into the grid. It gets stored in your battery. The unused power you've stored in your battery during the day is now available at night or at any time you need it. It means you use more of your solar power at home and buy less electricity from the grid overall. You can still earn credits on your power bills. When your battery is full, your solar system will send power back into the grid. Generally, you're better off having the right size battery and using your solar energy at home than selling your extra electricity back to the grid. The grid is important because when your battery is empty and your solar panels are not producing enough power for your appliances, you will use electricity from the grid to run your home.
All right. So hopefully, no matter how much you knew about solar coming into today's webinar, those two videos were helpful and give a little bit more context for thinking about how you might could go solar for your home. All right.
Does Dave want to take over from here?
I think we had Nancy that was going to talk about this slide. I
Okay.
think Nancy should be able to speak now.
When you start thinking about solar, you might start noticing a lot of ads, and some of them just sound fantastic. Like, you know, you can actually get paid for getting solar, that it will cost you nothing to have it installed, that it will only cost you $2,000 or $5,000, and all that is not really true. So you need to look for approved solar retailers, and you can ask your friends or anybody that you find out about how did it go for you, and you know, who is best and who's a good installer. Another thing that I found we needed to really look at was how long does it take for it to pay off? If they say it will pay off really, really fast, don't believe it. In other words, you know, don't believe every ad you see. And also beware of financing arrangements, because some of the companies that sell solar panels, they also say, well, you can pay them by financing with them. And you might find that their arrangements are not so good, and that it really, you would do better going to a bank. So that's something that you might want to do. And beware of the people that put pressure on you. So we had someone come in say, we'll give you all these discounts, and are you older? Yes, we are. Are you a veteran? Oh, yes. Okay, well, you get a discount for this, that, and the other. And then we'll be back tomorrow, find out your answer. That was a tip-off, right? A couple of tip-offs. One was they demanded an answer right away. So just be careful. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great, Nancy.
And this is Dave Rivnak, and thank you, Nancy. Everything you said, I believe, is true. But one thing I would urge people to do, there's a website out there called PV Watts. PV Watts. It's from the Renewable Energy Labs from the US government. And you can put in your address, put in your orientation, how much solar, and please use that as a good check step. That is probably one of the better sites that would give you what is realistic and something to kind of check a vendor against. PV Watts.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Dave. I will totally look that up and include that in an email out to folks when we share information after this presentation.
This is Joanne Irvin. I put PV Watts Solar Calculator app in the chat. So you can actually just download it onto your phone or iPad from the App Store, the PV Watts Solar Calculator.
Awesome.
And you can also do it via a web page without any downloads if you prefer.
Oh, okay.
Plenty of options for people. That's awesome. All right, Dave, do you want to cover this one?
Yes. Solar varies significantly from energy provider to energy provider. And in TVA territory, most of the resellers have to fall under TVA rules. And so TVA currently does not support net metering. And what net metering is there's a number of energy companies that on a sunny day, your meter essentially runs backwards, and you can build up credits with that power company. And I know with AEP, you have up to a year to then use those credits. And that makes it real nice and very easy to cover all of your energy use, because you can scale the system to basically cover your annual energy. And unfortunately, in our area, typically you generate the most solar in the spring and fall when temperatures are mild and you have a lot of clear days. But then your HVAC needs are typically lower in the spring and fall. And so that net metering allows you to store that up for the winter deficit that most of us see. Well, TVA does allow you to put in solar, and it's typically a behind the meter solar system. So you get to use it first. But when we work with people in a TVA area, we typically suggest that they either put in a very small system up to maybe about 30% of their energy usage, or they need a battery. And with a battery, you can go up to about 75%. The reason for that is on a smaller system, about 1/3, 25, 30% of your annual energy usage, you'll typically consume that directly and be exporting very little to TVA, because TVA is only going to pay you about 2 cents per kilowatt hour. And when you use that power back, it's going to be at 10 or 11 cents. So it really doesn't pay to send them much power. If you go to a battery, then you can store that excess power during the day and then use it at night. But again, because most people have their greatest needs in the wintertime and their greatest solar production in the spring and fall, about 75% is the typical maximum we recommend with TVA. TVA rules can and do change, and I've got a little bit of hope that they may change in the future now that we've rejoined the Paris Climate Accords. But at least for right now, TVA's program is a behind the meter system where you can just get wholesale rates for anything you export.
All right, Nancy, or whoever would like to speak about this one.
Okay. Sure. Let's see. I think we were actually going to. So would you like me to talk about the fees that I incurred or that I might have incurred? Is that? Or
Yeah, I think the power company fees you may have incurred.
okay. All right. So when I first broached the subject with Powell Valley, they told me that the fees would be $250 for inspection and $200 for installing for what they did when they came out here, adding up to $450. I was astounded. I had not heard that it would be like that. And then they said, well, and also there's a $10 a month fee for using it. And I'm thinking, my gosh, they have dropped the payback. TVA has dropped the payback from 10 cents, which I think Joanne's going to talk about that, down to 2 cents. And now I have to pay all this money. How is this going to work for me? And especially $10 a month. So I went and talked to the CEO, Randall Myers, before he retired. And the new head CEO was also in attendance at that meeting. So that was really good. And I said, I'm not the only one that's going to want solar. And I think this is unfair what you're doing. And I told them about other cooperatives around the area and what they were doing, like in Johnson City and other places, and that they were not being competitive, and they probably should get with the program of the way the world was going. So it was a pleasant conversation, and they ended up, to my surprise, dropping everything. I'm still checking my bills to see if that $10 fee is on there, but I don't think it will be. If it does come up, that Member Voices will be behind you if there's a problem. We definitely will all speak as one voice. So I guess that's a good thing so far. Thanks, Kendall.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. Now we're just going to hand it over to Dave to talk more as an expert in the field.
Yeah, I would like to introduce him first. Is that
Oh,
okay?
go right ahead. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I already knew Dave a little bit from some environmental work that I was doing because he has a Tesla. He loves to show it. He's a great volunteer showing his car, and he is all about saving energy. So after he retired from Eastman, he got involved with ecological energy systems, and it because I already knew him, I was so confident in how he thought and um, the way, his leaning towards helping people. I really liked that. And when he came, he really helped my husband and I decide what was the right path. By the way, he not only installed a solar system in his house, but also in his little camper. And I saw that one time and I was very impressed. So anyway, I'd like to turn it over to Dave. Thank you, Dave, for coming here today.
Yeah, thank you very much. We've worked hard over the last several years, basically to really reduce our carbon footprint. We're down now 89% from where we were back in 2009. And a lot of that is electric vehicles and our rooftop solar system to power the house and the cars. And in TVA territories, as I had mentioned earlier, we either recommend a small system, like we did with Nancy, to cover about 30% of their usage. So they don't give a whole lot of power to TVA at the low rates, but at least they're doing some good, they're getting some power, and they're getting some benefit. Larger systems can be done, but to really take advantage of it, you need batteries. The downside, unfortunately, is batteries are expensive these days. I'm hoping that will come down in the future, but currently, batteries add about $12,000 to the cost of a solar system. One additional benefit is if your power goes out, then you can keep, typically not your entire house, but you can keep your refrigerator, your freezers, your microwave, several lights on. So you can have some power while the grid is out and allow you to survive that much better. Solar systems can run anywhere from, as little as $14,000 if you put in a smaller 4 kilowatt system, up to, I've seen $55,000 for larger, 14 kilowatt systems with a number of batteries. So there is a huge range in solar, mostly dependent on how much power you use, and if you want batteries, just how much of your house you want to be able to provide power for. As I mentioned, solar is very dependent on the size. A 5 kilowatt system, and I guess this true, can range anywhere from 11 to 14,000 with the tax credit. There's still this year and next year a 26% tax credit. So if you were to put in a system, and this even covers batteries, next year when you file your taxes, you should get at least 26% of your tax of your system costs back. If by chance your taxes are a little bit less than that, you can carry it forward for several years and make sure you recoup your full investment there. It's hard to give an exact cost because depending on your roof, how easy it is to get on, how steep it is to work on, if you're doing a ground mount, how far you are, that we have to trench and run conduit from the array to your house. It varies for individual homes. So we typically, at a minimum, have to look at Google Earth to see where you're talking about putting the solar system and how easy it would be to integrate into your house. As I mentioned, larger 10 kilowatt systems can range from $18,000 to $22,000 a year, including that tax credit. And then batteries add about $9,000 with that tax credit. Payback in this area is usually between 13 and 25 years, with battery systems being the longest. Kind of depending on exactly, and batteries are the biggest part of this. It's similar to an annuity where, you pay in for your solar system, but then you're pretty much guaranteed you're going to get, between 4 and 7% of that investment back each and every year as, through your power rates. But it's better than a typical annuity in that it's after-tax money and it's indexed for inflation. So as your power rates go up, your investment in solar continues to go up as well. How to go about getting solar. Installers will help you figure out what panels will work best on your home. They will typically work with a co-op to figure out what are the rules and regulations. They'll typically connect you to the grid. There are financing options available, but as I believe Nancy mentioned, it's typically better to work through a local credit union on how much, or on getting a loan. They can typically do much better. Everything with solar depends on how many kilowatts you need. As I tell people, I'm willing to sell them as many solar panels as they want, but a lot of home efficiency things I recommend you do first. If you haven't changed out to LED lights, please do that first. If your hot water is possibly in need of replacement, get a newer heat pump water heater rather than a standard one. A standard water heater would typically take 8 solar panels to power it on the average over the year. But a heat pump water heater can get by with just 2 solar panels. And it's much cheaper to pay the extra for a heat pump water heater than to buy those extra 6 solar panels. The installers will look at your roof and or land. Is it suitable for solar? We'll talk to you about storage and do you want to pay for battery systems? And finally, we'll give you a quote. And all the good installers that I'm aware of, they're willing to give you a quote, and that's usually good for 30 days. So, I know other solar installers, they are not high pressure, at least the good ones. And, it's a big investment. So it's only right that you take your time to figure it out and what's best for you. There are currently financial incentives, the federal tax credit, as I mentioned, 26% of the cost of your system. And then that is supposed to decrease to 2022 and 2023. So, you've got some time if you're going to be doing solar, and that tax credit definitely helps a lot.
Thanks so much, Dave.
Okay, you're welcome.
Kendall, may I just add one thing to this?
Sure.
This is Bill. In my working with Powell Valley Electric Co-op and talking with other electric co-ops here in East Tennessee, one of the things that I heard from CEOs was that they were only told after a unit was installed about connecting. So if you do decide to connect, and Dave's business does this directly, but I've been encouraged by the CEO of Powell Valley Electric Co-op. If you know that you're going to install solar in your home, call the co-op when you start your actual work of installation. That will be much appreciated, and it could possibly save you a lot of hassle in the long run. Thank you.
Absolutely. I fully agree with that. This is Dave Rivnak again. And actually, I'd move that up before you start work. Make sure you check with your co-op, because rules can and do change, and you don't want to be caught on the bad side of your electric co-op. They can definitely make your challenges much greater if you don't have them on your side first.
All
This
right.
is Nancy. I agree with that too. They are all about working with people and they really like the personal touch. And it's great to touch base with them and tell them what you want and, you know, how popular it is. So that's a really, that's a really good thing to do. I also want to go back and mention something else. When you are interviewing people for the job, check out what the questions that they ask you should be thorough. They should want to look at where you intend to install it. You know, it should be realistic. For example, your roof on your house might be not sturdy enough, and you may have to go to your barn or to a ground mount. And those are important things. If they don't address that, that's a red flag that they are really not probably the installer for you. Thank you.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about your experience?
Well, I want
Nancy?
to introduce Joanne
All right.
because her experience was a little different, especially because she started in 2015. And also I want to praise her for the solar open house that she has every first Saturday in October. She's had several people come, and I think it's a wonderful thing so people can see firsthand what goes on. Thank you, Joanne.
Hi. Hi, everybody. Yes, and thank you, Nancy, for the praise. I haven't had a solar open house, well, since the pandemic started, and Dave was having them also. So, but I enjoyed people coming, and I hope we can open it back up and have people come again. So I decided in 2015, after I had done a lot of renovations on my house and increased insulation and so on, new windows, that I would get solar. At the time, TVA and the federal government were offering a better deal. So I got 30 panels. I do not have storage, and the 30 panels probably covers about 60% of my electric usage. With the contract, I got a 30% rebate from the federal government. I'm still getting a little bit of that every year. They pay me some and it rolls over into the next year. I think it's now been 5 years of some rebate. So I think I'm probably at the end of that. At the time, TVA was paying for some of the costs of installation. And at the time of commission, they gave me $1,000. And I had a better buyback on my electricity, so that for the first 10 years, it's 2 cents over the retail price of per kilowatt hour that I get back. And I get a reconciliation in January of every year. It comes to about $600 now. And I figured it up. I got my loan through the credit union of my sister, and she charged me 5%, but I didn't have to take a lien out on my house, so that was good. And I think my system is now paid for. I'm open to any questions people have that they would like to ask me about solar.
Me too, Joanne. I'm Nancy, and I'm open to it also.
All right, I think that leads us in really well. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and change the settings so everyone can turn on their cameras if they would like to, and we can go through some questions that we have. Okay, Okay, I'm not seeing exactly what I was looking for on letting people show, but I do have someone who raised their hand. So Kenneth.
Does Kenneth need to unmute?
It looks like Kenneth should be able to speak now. Well, it's showing that Kenneth is unmuted, but I think they put some questions in the chat earlier, so I can just read those out if the microphone's not working. It says our system 10 years contract with green power providers is expiring July 2021. Are there other programs we can sign up with? And is there a way to check the health or performance of our current solar system?
In checking the health of your current solar system, again, I would go with PV watts and run the analysis of the size of your system with the orientation. And you may have to, they don't understand about shading. So if you've got a tree that shades you part of the day, you may want to discount what they say by 10, 15, 20%, depending on how bad the shading is. But as a general rule, PV watts, you should be close to that. Now, you need to do that over a couple months. For instance, it turned out that February, at least on my system, was very dark. We had a lot of very cloudy days, very few sunny days. So we were about 40% below what PV watts said. But so far here in March, we've been blessed with a whole lot of sunny days. So we're doing a lot better than PV watts. So you got to look at it over a period of time, because it doesn't know your short-term weather or sun or, shading issues.
Dave, I'm wondering if he is referring to if you have your solar system already installed, how do you know how it's doing? So the solar,
right. So the PV watch should tell you kind of the gold standard of what it should be doing. And you should be able to read out on your solar system how much you've produced on a given day or in a given month. Depending on your system, most solar systems like yours, Nancy, you can go in and see how much you've produced every day or so far this month and how much you've produced last month. So you can use that to kind of compare against what PV watts says. And if you're significantly different, then you may likely have a problem. Maybe you've got a problem with wiring. Maybe you've got a damaged solar panel. Maybe you've got some damaged microinverters or optimizers. So, but if you're close to what PV watts is over at least a several month period, then you're probably doing about as good as you could expect to do.
All right. That's the only question I saw from the chat, but okay. Lynn just said, how do you care for your solar system once it has been installed? And again, please put questions in the chat if you have them.
Well, this is Dave Rivnak. I'll try that again. Fortunately, in this area, we're typically blessed with enough rain that I have not seen any benefit of washing or cleaning off solar panels. I've actually tried this personally, and I was not able to see any improvement. As a matter of fact, the 2 times I have cleaned, we saw a very slight reduction, which doesn't make any sense at all. And it's probably just noise in the data. So hopefully when you put in your solar system, they'll typically last, the panels, they're rated for 32 years, according to National Renewable Energy Labs. At least your panels and inverter should have at least a 10-year, if not a 12-year warranty, like the system that Nancy has. And so there's really nothing you need to do or should do unless you happen to have a very flat roof where your solar panels are close to horizontal. But if you're over a 20% slope, you shouldn't have to do anything.
Thanks for that, Dave. I just got another question from Kenneth. It says, do you have contact info for providers that will check our system?
We're willing to do that at Ecological. Ian Huddleston, I think that's Green Tech Energy Systems out of Greenville. He's likely to do it. And, you know, for me, if you're monitoring online, we might be able to do that without even a trip out, just by looking at your screens and your solar array with a Zoom call.
Great. Got a question from Bill. It says, is there a downside to ground install of panels?
This is Dave again. Ground installs are typically a little bit more money, not much, but a little bit more money. And it mostly depends on how close to the house you can be. You know, if you're only 50, 75 foot, a lot of times ground mounts can come out slightly cheaper. You know, it really depends on your particular roof. You know, if you've got a roof that's got a modest pitch, you know, 4 and 12, 5 and 12 pitch with a good southern exposure, that's going to be the cheapest. But if your roof is facing southeast, you've got a bunch of dormers, it's, you know, 8 and 12 or even a 12 and 12 pitch where it's really hard to work up there, that's where then a ground mount becomes cheaper. It kind of all depends on the geometry of your roof and how good of an exposure you have.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Dave. Yeah, that's really helpful. Got another question here. It said, are there different types of panels? I guess, again, maybe there's different types used for the ground or for on top of your home. And then how long do solar panels last?
Okay, so as far as different types of panels, yes, there's different types, but for all intents purposes, probably 95% fall into what's known as a 60 cell panel, which is like 40 inches wide and 5.5 foot tall, or what we typically call an industrial panel that is 40 inches wide and about 6.5 foot tall. Typically on roofs, we like using the 60 cell panels because they are a little bit easier to work on when you're on a roof, especially a steep roof. But sometimes, like in Nancy Bell's case, it worked out that the larger panels actually made more sense. Or in a ground mount, we'll typically use those larger panels because the ground mounting hardware is actually the more expensive part of the install. So we'll try to use those bigger panels that produce a little bit more power. But for the most part, it's just kind of aesthetics. You can also get panels that are black anodized on the frame, black back sheets. So, you know, they typically hide and blend into a dark roof. Those cost just a tad more, but sometimes if you've got a dark roof and you're putting solar on the street facing side, you're worth paying that little extra money to kind of make the solar almost disappear. And as far as how long do they last, according to, again, the Renewable Energy Labs, they're saying 32 years. Ecological has been around for almost 12 years now. And all of our original systems are still running and still producing without any ill effects. So I know for a fact 11 years, the ones on my house are 7 years, and they're doing just fine.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat so far. So if someone has anything else they would like to add, please include that and we'll get that answered if we can. Lynn put some info in the chat, but I will go ahead and pull back up our final slide here. Okay, we have a question from Robert. It says, time to install. So maybe
Like, you
how long
mean
to-
like time of the year? Like, does it matter? Does it matter if it's installed in the winter or in the summer? Is that the sense of it, Robert?
Let's see, I just allowed Robert to unmute. Okay, go ahead. Not hearing from Robert. Maybe it's another issue with microphones.
Project time.
Robert said project time.
Project time.
Are you asking how long it takes to install solar? If so, this is Dave Rivnak, and I would say typically, usually minimum of 4 weeks for us, and it could be as long as 12 weeks. You know, depends on weather, depends on work backlog, depends on how fast inspections come in. Sometimes there's hard or there's challenges getting the equipment in. So I typically tell people, you know, in the 8 to 10 week period is probably good. And then that can vary depending on workload. The actual install where we're on the house is typically just about 3 days. That isn't real long. It's just lining up all the various pieces and parts to come together for that 3-day install that sometimes takes a lot of time.
All right, we have a question here from Lynn that says, what sort of inspection can one expect if they install solar?
This is Dave again. So typically after we're done, we usually, we must have a licensed inspector, or I mean, a licensed electrician install your system. So then typically the county or city electrical inspector will come out and make sure it meets all codes and their approval. And once that is done, then they typically will notify the utility. And frequently the utility will come out for kind of a second overview, look, see, make sure everything looks right. And importantly, they'll frequently change out your meter. Most meters can't tell which direction that the electron's flowing. And with solar, you want to know that because you don't want to be charged for any power you might happen to export. So you want to make sure you have a bi-directional meter. And so usually it's those two inspections that usually happen within a couple of days of each other.
I would like to add 2 things to that. One is that is it okay if I talk?
Yeah, go ahead.
One is that the inspector that I had, and I live in the little Hawkins part of it, Hawkins County part of Powell Valley, but the guy came from Claiborne. I can't remember his name now, but he really does most of the work for Powell Valley Electric. And he is sent by the state of Tennessee. So he signs off on it. And the other thing I wanted to mention, when you're talking about two directional, the reason you're doing that is that if the lineman, the meters need to know what direction the electric is flowing. Because if linemen are working on a wire, you don't want your electric going through it. They're not expecting any to come when they shut down the electric on a pole, and they're working on a pole on electric after that pole. They wouldn't expect electric to be coming, but it would be if you're sending it. So there has to be safeguards on it. It's really important.
Yeah, and again, this goes back to the idea of notifying your electric co-op when you're thinking of doing solar installs, so they'll know about you from the very beginning.
Yes. And this also brings up a second point, that one of the reasons, it's not that when I said batteries typically add a good $12,000 to the cost, it's not that the batteries are that expensive. It's just now that you have batteries, now you have to have a transfer switch to guarantee that you can't send power back to the power company. You also need a more expensive inverter that's now a battery charger and a power inverter, as well as a solar inverter. So it's all those extra pieces and parts and the labor to do the additional wiring. You typically have to have what's known as a critical load subpanel, because as a general rule, batteries can't run your whole house. So you kind of pick your critical systems that you want to run. So it's all those things in combination that add up to that extra price on battery systems.
Thank you.
Lynn said, initially our solar meter was going backwards. PVEC came out a couple weeks ago and changed the meter out. The new meter goes forwards. What's up with that?
It's possible, absolutely nothing at all. It could be, and let's hope it's a smart meter. And what it does is, rather than run backwards, it has different registers. So you would have one register on power you consume and a second register on power you export. That's how my meter works on AEP, but different meters work differently. So I don't want to necessarily say that. But if anything looks funny in your bill, definitely contact your electric company to make sure that everything is correct.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, we have a question here from Beth that says, so with the battery, you would not be sending any electrons back to the grid ever?
Depends on how you set it up. So, and we've got different customers that do different things. So we've got a gentleman who's on a houseboat on Watauga Lake. And it's kind of a really gray area, because the marina kind of really owns the meter, not the power company, and nobody kind of knew what to do. And so what happens in there, they will not send power back. Now, what that means is, during a lot of the year when he's not there, that means there's a lot of solar power that's basically just being wasted. But if he did send it back, because they wouldn't change his meter, they would actually charge him for the privilege of sending power back. So in his case, he doesn't want to send any power back, and we can set that up at the meter. Other systems are such that a gentleman and lady in Sevierville, they figured out that 2 cents a kilowatt hour is better than nothing. So they will first run their house. Second, they will charge their battery. But if they've got excess PV, they'll send it back, and they'll get a small check at the end of the year. So it just depends on your goals, the rules of your local power company, and what you want to do.
How is your experience? What do you?
I got a note here from Kenneth that said, their system works with 2 meters as well, one for usage and one for what the panels put out. So that's just all great things to keep in mind.
Yes, so that was the old TVA rules. So anybody in TVA land before 2020, you had to put in a second meter. And that was part of those extra fees that Nancy was talking about. And that $10 a month was an extra fee to read that second meter. Well, and because TVA was paying you a reasonable amount of money for the power you exported, a lot of people put up with those fees. But when TVA completely cut that out, then all of a sudden those fees became onerous. And one of the good things now with TVA is you don't need a second meter base. You don't need to put in a second meter and that extra wiring. You can kind of just tie straight into your breaker box and use the existing infrastructure. So there's some benefits with TVA's change as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much for all of your expertise here, Dave. I'm going to hand it over to Bill to close us out here. We're approaching the hour and wanted to end on time. So thank you, everyone. And Bill?
Yeah, I would just like to, this is our first effort to do a webinar of this type, or any type for that matter. And I really definitely want to publicly also thank Dave and there are actually at least three people on this webinar that have solar on their homes. So, and we'd encourage everyone that's out there to explore this and take this opportunity to make a move that's better for our environment. Our PVEC Member Voices group has regular meetings. You can start by going to the website, which is there on that last slide. And we have a phone number, and we'd love to talk with anybody about issues from relating to solar or transparency, mail-in ballots, and a bunch of other material that we're working on with the electric co-op. So thanks. And then Kendall, thank you for setting this up for us.
Happy to do it. Also, to everyone who's here, I will be sending out an email shortly, probably tomorrow, that will have links to the videos and extra information, and also ways to get in touch with Member Voices and a recording of this webinar. So again, thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a great rest of your day.